Buddy Ebsen once stood on the brink of becoming the most famous tin man in film history, and nearly died because of that very makeup. He inhaled aluminum dust while filming The Wizard of Oz, was hospitalized in an oxygen tent, and replaced within days. From that moment, a rising MGM star fell into a prolonged silence, bound by contract, pushed to the margins of the studio system, carrying respiratory complications for the rest of his life. A dazzling opportunity turned into a professional scar. And that was only the beginning. Yet the man did not disappear. Buddy Ebsen returned, reborn on television as Jed Clampett in the Beverly Hillbillies, drawing up to 60 million viewers each week. He transformed again into the composed, aging detective in Barnaby Jones, proving that charisma does not reside in youth, but in resilience. An actor once forced out of a legendary film went on to build a career spanning more than 7 decades, from vaudeville and Broadway to Hollywood and the heights of television. Talent, tragedy, injury, and unwavering determination intertwined to shape a life layered with contradictions. A star nearly forgotten, a private father beneath the glare of stage lights, a man pushed out of his dream yet unwilling to step away from the stage. To understand why a man could rise after such a fall, one has to go much further back, to a small town long before the lights of Hollywood ever reached his name. Buddy Ebsen was born on April 2nd, 1908, in Belleville, Illinois, as Christian Ludolph Ebsen, Jr. He did not grow up among film sets or in a family of celebrated performers, but in a household where art existed in its most unadorned form. His father, Christian Ebsen, Sr., was a German-born choreographer who believed in bodily discipline and the power of movement. He ran a dance studio and also managed a swimming pool for the local school district. His mother, Frances, a Baltic German painter, brought into that home a quiet richness of imagery. Buddy's 4 sisters grew up with music and the rhythm of feet across wooden floors. As and the boy in the middle, neither the eldest nor the youngest, learned to observe, to listen, and then to move. When Buddy was 10, the family left Illinois for Florida, first to Palm Beach County and then to Orlando. There, his father's dance studio became the center of family life. He and his sisters did not simply learn steps. They learned precision, rhythm, and how to stand straight when other eyes were fixed upon them. Yet beyond the dance floor, Buddy nurtured another dream. He once wanted to become a doctor, driven in part by illnesses that had affected members of his family. After graduating from Orlando High School in 1926, he entered the University of Florida and later transferred to Rollins College, pursuing pre-medical studies. When the Florida real estate market collapsed, the Ebsen family, like many others in that era, was swept into financial hardship. His father's earlier investments no longer yielded the expected results. Financial pressure mounted quickly, and Buddy was forced to leave school at the age of 20. The medical path ended not because of a lack of ability, but because circumstances would not allow it to continue. In the summer of 1928, he left Orlando for New York, with just over $20 in his pocket. There were no guarantees, no contracts, only the dance skills honed since childhood and a quiet resolve. If he could not become a doctor, he would find another way to survive. And, if fortunate, to rebuild what his family had lost. New York did not welcome him with open arms. And the city offered Buddy Ebsen a soda fountain counter and late shifts in exchange for rent money. The $26 he had carried from Orlando quickly became a sum he had to calculate down to the last cent. By day, he served customers, wiped counters, and wrote up orders. By night, he searched for a stage. No medical school remained, no clear road ahead. He clung to the only thing he could sell, the rhythm of his body. Vilma, the sister who had grown up with him on the wooden floor of their father's dance studio, entered New York as a natural ally. They formed a performing duo and boldly named themselves the Baby Astairs, a choice both daring and risky. From cramped supper clubs where audiences dined while watching a narrow stage, they advanced to crowded vaudeville theaters, where laughter and applause could lift an artist high or drown them within minutes. Buddy stood taller than most male performers, his 6'3" frame causing him to be rejected from many auditions for being unsuitable for the frame. What had been an advantage in Orlando became an obstacle on Broadway. He did not shrink. He learned to turn that height into part of his style. In Whoopee in 1928, then Flying Colors and Ziegfeld Follies of 1934, Buddy's movement was unlike anyone else's. Long strides, limbs stretched as if elongated, sometimes deliberately slightly offbeat, creating an effect that was at once humorous and surreal. He did not dance to display technique. He told stories with his body, allowing controlled awkwardness to become personality. A favorable write-up by Walter Winchell after a performance in Atlantic City opened a major door: the Palace Theater. For a vaudeville performer, that stage was nearly the pinnacle of the system at the time. To step onto it meant that your name truly existed. That unconventional style did more than captivate theater audiences. Walt Disney noticed the way Buddy moved and had him filmed dancing in front of a grid so that animators could study every joint of his arms and every beat of his feet. During the late 1920s and into the 1930s, in the era of silly symphonies, those studies helped shape how animated characters, including Mickey, moved on screen. From a young man who once stood behind a soda counter, Buddy Ebsen gradually became an inspiration for American animation, not through grand titles, but through each step refined in the sleepless nights of New York. The door to Hollywood opened in 1935 when Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer noticed the Ebsen siblings and invited them to audition. Vilma soon stepped away from the machinery of filmmaking, but Buddy remained, signing a contract with MGM at a time when the studio dominated the musical genre. For a young man who had once begged for opportunities on vaudeville stages, entering the closed studio system, where everything from lighting and costumes to public image was tightly controlled, was both a dream and a psychological trial. He was no longer a free artist improvising to the applause of an audience. He had to become a product that could be shaped, trimmed, and arranged. In 1936, Born to Dance placed him among the prominent faces of MGM musicals. In the film's climactic sequences, the tall frame that had once cost him roles on Broadway became an advantage on the wide screen. The CinemaScope frame highlighted each long stride and his somewhat unconventional bearing. The film was a commercial success, reinforcing MGM's dominance in musicals, and Buddy began to be seen as an emerging presence, not an A-list star, but distinctive enough to be remembered. Captain January gave him the chance to dance alongside Shirley Temple, the most powerful child box office icon of the era. Working beside a young star whose position was nearly untouchable required restraint. Buddy could not overshadow her. He had to adjust his rhythm to support her while still preserving his own personality. Those shared scenes revealed his ability to control his energy, knowing when to burst forward and when to step back. By Broadway Melody of 1938, appearing alongside Judy Garland and names such as Eleanor Powell and Frances Langford, Buddy entered an even more fiercely competitive environment. Scenes were rehearsed to exhaustion. Each take had to be flawless because of high production costs and the heavy pressure of box office returns bearing down on the entire team. He was not the center of every gaze, but his presence, upright posture, movements deliberately off in a subtle way, added a different shade to the increasingly polished world of musicals. Not yet 30, Buddy Ebsen was regarded as a rising star of the genre, standing between MGM's glittering peak and the quiet tensions of a system where opportunity always came with binding conditions. Just as his career was climbing, a film that seemed like merely another step upward became a cruel turning point. In 1938, Buddy Ebsen was cast in The Wizard of Oz, MGM's most ambitious project at the time. Initially, he was assigned the role of the Scarecrow. It was the chance for a musical rising star to step directly into the ranks of faces etched into cinematic history. But within the machinery of role assignments, Ray Bolger expressed a desire to switch parts. Buddy agreed to relinquish Scarecrow and take on the role of the Tin Man, believing that simply being in the film was enough. He recorded his songs, rehearsed choreography, and stepped into the first days of filming covered head to toe in makeup. The shimmering metal seen on screen was in fact made from fine aluminum dust. Under the blazing heat of the studio lights, the metallic powder melted, floated in the air, and Buddy inhaled it day after day. His body began to react, aches, cramps, shortness of breath. His lungs were severely damaged as metallic particles lodged in his respiratory tract, obstructing oxygen exchange. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks, confined in an oxygen tent, followed by 6 additional weeks of recovery in a weakened state. Meanwhile, the film could not stop. MGM replaced him with Jack Haley and adjusted the makeup formula to make it safer. Most of the dialogue and songs were re-recorded, but in a few ensemble passages, and Buddy's voice can still be heard, a faint trace of a role that might have entirely altered his destiny. The studio minimized the incident as a simple allergic reaction. The damage to his lungs was far from simple, and it remained with him for the rest of his life. That disaster was not the end of the collisions. When Louis B. Mayer offered him an exclusive contract, meaning MGM would hold near total control over his career, Buddy refused. In the studio system of that era, refusal was a bold act. He would not accept becoming an asset bound in absolute control. The consequences came swiftly and coldly. Doors at major studios closed. The name Buddy Ebsen gradually disappeared from Hollywood priority lists in the early 1940s. There was no public declaration, no official document, but offers dwindled. He was pushed to the margins in an industry where power relationships determined opportunity. Rather than wait in silence, Buddy returned to the stage, toured, and accepted any role that would keep him standing on a platform. When the Second World War broke out, he sought another path. And with a passion for seafaring long nurtured, he joined the United States Coast Guard, holding the rank of lieutenant. Aboard the USS Pocatello, he participated in offshore weather patrol missions, 30-day stretches at sea, 10 days in port at Seattle, then back out again. The sea was cold, the duties monotonous and dangerous, yet for him, it was a way to reaffirm his own worth when Hollywood no longer opened its doors. On the ship, he wrote small sketches and staged entertainment programs for the crew, maintaining a rhythm of spirit amid the gray ocean. In that vast expanse, Buddy Ebsen was no longer a musical star or the almost Tin Man, but an officer, an artist still striving to keep the flame of creativity alive even after the stage lights had gone dark. When the war ended and he left the service in 1946, Hollywood was no longer the familiar territory of the late 1930s. The film industry still operated under the old system, but a new medium was slipping into living rooms across America: television. And Buddy Ebsen, the man once pushed out of the studio machinery, saw in it another door. In 1949, he appeared in Chevrolet Teletheater. It was not a dazzling leading role, nor a loud comeback. But for someone who had endured illness, been replaced in a landmark project, and faced unspoken pressure from studio moguls, simply standing before a camera again was an act of survival. Television at that time was broadcast live, leaving little room for error, demanding quick reflexes and immediate problem-solving, an environment well-suited to someone forged in vaudeville and Broadway. From there, he appeared frequently on programs such as Stars over Hollywood, Broadway Television Theater, and Schlitz Playhouse of Stars. The variety of roles helped free him from the image of someone who only knew how to dance. He began taking on characters with greater depth, even sharper edges. In Maverick and Bonanza, Buddy left a mark with cold, calculated antagonists, something few would have expected from an actor once associated with cheerful musicals. The eyes that had once seemed gentle in dance roles now carried layers of weariness and experience. Perhaps it was those years spent on the margins that allowed him to reach that tone. The true turning point came when Walt Disney cast him as George Russell in the Davy Crockett series. No longer the lanky MGM dancer, he embodied the loyal companion of a frontier hero. The series sparked a nationwide craze. Children wore coonskin caps, sang the theme song, and the name Buddy Ebsen once again echoed in millions of households. After nearly 2 decades of fluctuation, he regained broad public recognition. Not on Broadway stages, but on the small screen. Then came Northwest Passage, one of the first color Western series on American television. At a time when television was gradually shifting to color, participating in such a project meant standing at the forefront of technological change. Buddy, with his tall frame and calm demeanor, blended into the frontier landscape of dust and gunfire, as affirming that he could exist beyond musicals. In 1961, he appeared in Breakfast at Tiffany's as Doc Golightly, the rustic, sincere man who still carried feelings for the woman who had left him behind. The film achieved major box office success and cultural impact. Within a glittering story set in fashionable New York, Buddy's character was a quiet and painful fragment of rural memory. He did not need extensive screen time to leave an impression. In just a few brief scenes, through a patient gaze, he brought a deeply human pause to the film. After more than a decade quietly rebuilding his position through television, the decisive opportunity arrived in 1962 when producer Paul Henning saw in Buddy Ebsen the image he needed for a new sitcom. Henning did not want a loud comedian. He needed a face trustworthy enough for audiences to believe that innocence could coexist with wisdom. And Buddy stepped into the role of Jed Clampett as if he had been waiting for it for years. The Beverly Hillbillies opened with a premise that seemed almost absurd. A mountain family from the Ozarks accidentally discovers oil on their land, suddenly becomes millionaires, and moves into luxurious Beverly Hills. The collision between simplicity and extravagance generated laughter. But what kept audiences watching was Jed's composure. Buddy did not turn the character into a caricature, and he built a man who was plain yet morally intuitive, someone who might not understand the rules of high society, but always saw through people's hearts. That acting choice made Jed the emotional center of the series. 60 million viewers at its peak was not merely a television achievement, it was a cultural phenomenon. The episode Giant Jack Rabbit set a ratings record for a half-hour program, a milestone the industry at the time could not ignore. In its first 2 seasons, the show ranked #1 on the Nielsen charts. Throughout its 9-year run, it remained almost constantly in the top 20. While critics dismissed its country tone and what they considered simplistic humor, audiences found in the Clampett family something familiar and comforting during a period of national upheaval. Its success also paved the way for related series such as Petticoat Junction and Green Acres, creating a rural sitcom wave that dominated television. Yet behind the laughter were fractures difficult to conceal. Buddy, with his conservative political views, I'd often clashed with Nancy Culp, who played Miss Jane Hathaway and held more liberal positions. The differences did not stop at debates in the makeup room. They stretched over years and flared openly when Nancy ran for Congress in 1984. Buddy publicly supported her opponent, an act many saw as deepening the division. For him, it was a choice rooted in personal conviction. For others, it felt like a betrayal of collegial loyalty. The tension made the real-life image of the Clampett family far less intact than it appeared on screen. In 1971, CBS launched what became known as the Rural Purge, eliminating shows with rural themes to target younger urban audiences. The Beverly Hillbillies was canceled despite still drawing significant viewership, not because audiences had turned away, but because the network shifted direction. For Buddy Ebsen, the role of Jed Clampett had lifted him to a late-life peak in his 50s, and it was television itself, the medium that had rescued him after years on the margins, that closed that brilliant chapter with a cold decision driven by the market. When the Beverly Hillbillies ended amid the wave of the rural purge, many believed Buddy Ebsen had reached the end of his journey. He was already past 60, had embodied an iconic role, and had stood at the pinnacle of national ratings. Yet just 2 years later, and he reappeared in an entirely different form. Barnaby Jones, an elderly detective, cold and patient, emerging from the world of urban crime rather than the hills of the Ozarks. Barnaby Jones premiered in 1973, and what surprised audiences was not only the genre shift, it was the way Buddy reconstructed himself. He left behind the innocence of Jed Clampett and adopted the sharp demeanor of an investigator, relying on intellect and composure instead of laughter. Across 178 episodes spanning 8 seasons, he was not merely the lead face, but the heartbeat of the series. At an age when many actors had already withdrawn, he worked at an intense pace, mastering dense scripts, filming tense scenes that demanded sustained concentration. The respiratory issues dating back to The Wizard of Oz had never fully disappeared, yet he did not allow them to show on screen. Lee Merriweather, who played Barnaby's daughter-in-law, repeatedly emphasized his professionalism during production. There was no temperamental aging star, no visible fatigue. Buddy arrived on set with the discipline of a former officer, lines memorized, maintaining rhythm, supporting his co-stars. In an industry often unforgiving toward age, he proved that audiences were still willing to follow an older character if that character was convincing enough. Barnaby Jones also intersected with other series, most notably through a crossover with Canon, a sign that CBS placed significant trust in the brand. That connection expanded the television crime universe and kept Buddy at the center of primetime drama throughout the 1970s. Ratings remained steady, viewers loyal, and once again his image became inseparable from a character the public remembered by name. By the early 1980s, when the demanding production schedule began to require more from a body already past 70, Barnaby Jones came to an end. According to some sources, it was Buddy himself who chose to close that chapter because his health no longer allowed him to maintain such intensity. It was not canceled amid collapsing ratings, but concluded through a decision rooted in autonomy, something rare in a career that had once endured so much pressure from the studio system. 2 decades after Jed Clampett, Buddy Ebsen had achieved a second rebirth. And when the feature film adaptation of the Beverly Hillbillies was released in 1993, he made a brief appearance in a cameo as Barnaby Jones, a bridge between the 2 brightest chapters of his life. He did not need extensive screen time, and a single moment was enough for audiences to recognize that the man once replaced, once pushed out of Hollywood, had lived long and endured strongly enough to rewrite his fate more than once. During the years he was still immersed in Broadway and his first Hollywood contracts, Buddy Ebsen's private life was also taking shape. Ruth Cambridge entered his life in the early 1930s. when he was still a dancer striving to establish himself between Broadway and his initial film agreements. They met as he was transitioning from New York to deeper involvement in Hollywood, a period filled with both hope and uncertainty. Ruth was not a major star, but she understood the life of performance, the irregular rhythms of work, and the invisible pressures of the entertainment industry. That understanding allowed their relationship to progress quickly. In 1933, they married while Buddy was still feeling his way through the MGM system. In the years that followed, amid musical projects and expanding contracts, their small family gradually formed. And their first daughter, Elizabeth Ann Ebsen, was born in 1936, precisely when Buddy began to gain wider recognition through musical films. 2 years later, in 1938, coinciding with his involvement in The Wizard of Oz and the health crisis that followed, their second daughter, Althea Catherine Ebsen, was born. Elizabeth and Althea grew up while their father moved constantly between film sets and home. Elizabeth later pursued dance and participated in performing arts, though she did not enter major film acting as her father had. Althea chose a more private life, appearing less frequently in public. But glory does not last forever. The Wizard of Oz incident in 1938 disrupted not only his career but also his family life. Severe lung damage led to weeks of hospitalization, followed by a draining recovery period and emotional instability. Being replaced in a major project, then gradually edged out of the studio center, meant that his income and position were no longer as secure as before. Ruth witnessed a husband once filled with confidence begin confronting the feeling of being excluded. The Second World War created another distance when Buddy joined the Coast Guard. Long cycles at sea separated the family. Ruth remained at home raising 2 young daughters while he served offshore. Years of separation altered the rhythm of their lives. Before the war had even fully ended, the marriage had deeply fractured. In 1943, and after 10 years together, they divorced. There was no loud scandal, no dramatic statement, just 2 people who had passed through a turbulent decade and no longer shared the harmony they once had. Though his marriage to Ruth ended, his role as a father did not. During the years he served in the Coast Guard and rebuilt his career through television, his daughters remained part of his private life, which he kept relatively discreet. When his name resurged powerfully with the Beverly Hillbillies in the 1960s, Elizabeth and Althea were already adults. They did not exploit their father's fame to step into the spotlight, instead maintaining a certain distance from Hollywood. The relationship between Buddy and his 2 eldest daughters was recorded as quiet but enduring, a family bond existing alongside the rises and falls of his career. When his first marriage ended in the midst of the war years, Buddy Ebsen was not only leaving a household, but also standing at a midpoint in his career. It was within the military environment that he met Nancy Walcott, a female officer in the Coast Guard during World War II. They became acquainted amid military discipline and demanding assignments, where the glamour of Hollywood held no meaning. Their bond did not begin with fame, but with circumstance and camaraderie. In 1945, just after the war ended, they married. This would become Buddy's longest marriage, lasting 4 decades. If Ruth had been tied to the years of his rise and stumble in Hollywood, Nancy was linked to the period when he rebuilt everything from almost nothing. The late 1940s and early 1950s were far from easy. Television was still in its infancy. Roles were sporadic, income unstable. Nancy stood beside him during that uncertain period, when the name Buddy Ebsen was no longer among the priorities of major studios. They had 5 children together. Kathleen Kiki Ebsen, born 1958, who later became a singer, cabaret performer, and a storyteller recounting her father's life on stage. Dustin Ebsen, born 1954, who pursued the arts and worked in production and creative management. Bonnie Ebsen, known in the equestrian and horse racing world, winning numerous national titles in the field. Susanna Ebsen and Kathy Ebsen, who chose more private lives, staying away from the media spotlight. Their home in the 1950s to 1960s was that of a large, noisy family tied to Buddy's increasingly demanding work schedule. When the Beverly Hillbillies became a phenomenon with tens of millions of viewers each week, Nancy was not only the wife of a primetime television star, but also the manager of family life behind closed doors. Then success brought financial stability, but also pressure. Long shooting schedules, promotional events, public attention. Over the years, differences in temperament and pace of life gradually became more apparent. Buddy carried the strong independence of someone who had once resisted the studio system, while Nancy had devoted much of her life to family and the shifting tides of her husband's career. 40 years is a long time for two people to change. In 1985, they divorced. There was no major public scandal, but after 4 decades, the relationship no longer held the same cohesion. The children maintained relationships with their father, especially Kiki, who later often shared family memories and spoke about his influence on her inner life. Nancy Walcott had accompanied Buddy from the period when he was nearly forgotten to the time he became a national television icon. Those 40 years of marriage reflected his entire process of rebuilding and stabilization, quiet, yet enduring and full of change. After the 4-decade marriage ended in 1985, Buddy Ebsen entered another phase of his life. Already in his 70s, his fame firmly etched into television history, and his pace no longer as relentless as before. It was during that time that he met Dorothy Knott, a woman 40 years his junior. The age gap immediately became a topic of discussion in the media and among his acquaintances, but Buddy did not avoid his choice. They married in 1985, the same year he officially closed his previous marriage. There were no typical Hollywood scandals attached, yet the generational difference kept the relationship under public observation. Dorothy entered his life when he no longer had anything to prove to the entertainment industry. He had been Jed Clampett, had been Barnaby Jones, had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. What she encountered was not an actor racing his career, but an older man rich with experience, still curious about life, continuing to write books, collect coins, and sail. This marriage was tied to Buddy's final years, the period when he gradually reduced acting roles, appeared selectively on television, and devoted more time to personal passions such as painting and writing. Dorothy remained beside him as his health began to require greater attention, as the lung damage from the 1939 incident continued to linger over the years. The age difference between them once fueled whispers, yet their daily life was far quieter than outside speculation suggested. From the mid-1980s to the early 2000s, Buddy Ebsen no longer chased packed shooting schedules or ratings charts. After a brief appearance in the 1993 film version of The Beverly Hillbillies and voice work on television in the late 1990s, he largely withdrew from acting. His rhythm of life shifted onto another axis, and no longer were there film sets stretching from morning to night, no stacks of scripts covering the desk. Buddy devoted most of his time to activities requiring quiet concentration. He wrote every day, steadily, like a professional habit he could not abandon. His desk at home was filled with notebooks, manuscripts marked in red ink, and letters from readers sent after his memoir. The Other Side of Oz was published in 1993. Alongside his memoir, he ventured into fiction. Kelly's Quest, published in the early 1990s, carried an adventurous historical tone, reflecting his passion for the sea and voyages across oceans. Once a Coast Guard officer, He infused the novel with the atmosphere of naval discipline, long patrols across the Pacific, and the sense of solitude on the open sea. Writing was not a late-life pastime for him, but a way to continue creating after the stage lights had dimmed. His passion for coin collecting was pursued with a seriousness rarely seen in an actor of his fame. He did not collect for display value, but for the history hidden behind each piece of metal. His collection included rare coins worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Co-founding the Beverly Hills Coin Club was not merely nominal. He attended meetings, exchanged expertise. I researched the provenance of each coin like a genuine scholar. Painting remained present in quiet afternoons when he sat before an easel, focusing on each layer of color, seeking a balance that the entertainment industry had rarely allowed. Even in his 80s, Buddy retained the clarity and discipline of someone who had lived through vaudeville, film, television, and military service. Yet the consequences of the lung injury from 1939 never completely disappeared. His breathing weakened with age. Infections became more dangerous to a body that had entered its 90s. On July 6, 2003, in Torrance, California, Buddy Ebsen died of pneumonia at the age of 95. Dorothy was his companion in those final years. Not during the time he struggled with the studio system or chased television ratings, but in the years when he slowed down, surrounded by memories of a journey spanning more than 7 decades. His death closed a path that had stretched across more than 70 years in the entertainment industry, from vaudeville stages to the golden age of American sitcoms. News of his passing did not only recall Jed Clampett or Barnaby Jones, but also evoked an artist once removed from The Wizard of Oz, once pushed to the margins of Hollywood, who returned by his own effort and stood firm. The legacy he left does not rest on a single role, but on his capacity to endure and be reborn through each changing era of a relentless industry. When the television lights gradually dimmed and his public appearances became less frequent, what remained was not merely the image of a white-bearded old man once saying, "Well, doggies," in prime time. Buddy Ebsen's legacy lies in the rare length of a career sustained across 4 eras: vaudeville, MGM, black and white television, and the age of color. He was among the very few artists able to transform from a Broadway dancer into a musical film star, then into a sitcom icon, and later be reborn as a television detective for nearly another decade. 2 roles that seemed impossible to reconcile. Jed Clampett, rustic and plain-spoken, and Barnaby Jones, sharp and analytical, coexisted within one man, proving a range far broader than what Hollywood had once assigned to him. His name is engraved on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He was honored by Disney as a Disney legend, and episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies continue to air decades after their finale. The record of 60 million viewers for a sitcom in the early 1960s is not merely a statistic. It is evidence of the cultural magnetism he helped create. Controversies, replacements, and the years he was pushed to the margins of the studio system did not erase that imprint. On the contrary, they clarified the perseverance that shaped his entire journey. Buddy Ebsen passed away in 2003, yet generations of audiences still encounter him on screen. When laughter rises from an Ozarks family transplanted into Beverly Hills, or when a silver-haired detective quietly surveys a crime scene. An artist who nearly lost everything because of a coat of metallic makeup ultimately left behind a legacy that does not fade. If one must choose what endures after more than 70 years on stage and screen, it is not only talent, but the ability to rise again each time he was written out of the role of his own life. Buddy Ebsen left behind not only film reels and echoes of laughter, but a professional spirit that refused to yield. His endurance was not loud, nor ostentatious, but strong enough to outlast illness, upheaval in the entertainment industry, and repeated exclusion from major opportunities. He lived with art as a lifelong commitment, not as a race for fame. That attitude is what has kept his name from fading with time, allowing it to stand quietly firm within the shifting history of Hollywood. The values he represented, discipline, creativity, faith in steady labor, still resonate today. His journey reminds us that talent may open the door, but it is resilience that keeps the lights burning over the long term. If this story has given you pause or stirred a fond memory of the screen's past, share your thoughts below. Subscribe to the channel and share the video so we can continue exploring other remarkable lives from Hollywood.